of global warming and greenhouse gases has been there for quite a while. Things are changing, and I hope that the world leaders will come to some action.
There has already been enormous progress in finding ways to prolong human life, and that progress will continue even though progress has enabled us to live longer, or maybe because progress has enabled us to live longer. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a fun-packed, impressive conference that's starting off now. And I am delighted to be able to invite a panel to this first session of this track. It's a very esteemed panel that I'll introduce in a moment. We're waiting for Henry to join us, but he will be along very shortly. We're here on this session to open the day to talk about the entertainment industry and the new digital leisure formats. It's a really dynamic space. There's lots of activity happening all over the world, and the panel here are joined today to try and shed some light to illuminate us on what the trends are over time and how digital is transforming this media space. I'm Tracy Follows. I'll be moderating the panel. And I'm joined today by Ruben of Media One, by Tatiana of Amediateca, and also Henry Jenkins, who's Professor of Communication, who, as I said, will be joining us very shortly. So why don't we kick off by just trying to think about all that's happened, well, not all that's happened, but some of what's happened over the last 18 months to 2 years during the pandemic. It seems to have accelerated our digital uptake. And of course, everybody was isolated at home with their media entertainment systems. I wonder if you could just talk us through some of the things that you thought has changed in the last 18 months to 2 years due to the pandemic. I'll start with Tatiana. Would you like to kick off, Tatiana? I think you're on mute.
Да, определенно, хочу начать.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to start. Thank you very much for bringing me here, and good morning, everyone. So what I would like to mention in the first time. So we are happy to live in an era of technological progress. We can grow, and it's a great honor. It's a very, and also it's a very great responsibility. When it comes to technologies should give us an opportunity to make art and entertainment closer. Everything should be easy, comfortable, one click away to watch a TV series or to check an exhibition or to listen to an audiobook. So what's happening with the industry? Entertainment industry is filled with new technologies and opportunities. Consumer trends are have been shaped for many years, and a lot of changed in just one lockdown. The pandemic accelerated those changes and behavior of our consumers. Also, it's all about introducing new technologies, and it has defined a breakthrough in different entertainment areas. Social distancing and limitations accelerated the tempo of digitalization. Just last year, the entertainment industry and mass media world has become a remote one, a virtual one, a streaming one, more customized, more personalized, and now we are now focused on staying home. But talking specifically about our business, about online cinemas, we've been living in this paradigm of growth, where thanks to technologies, cinemas are now more available. It's a very good example where a written press is a very good example. A lot of things have been accelerated in recent time. All these changes change leadership models. And if we talk about our area, content consumption, according to the forecast, cinemas revenues will be higher than those of the cinema companies. So everything that I mentioned is a very bright example of how technologies drive business and how they define media entertainment leaders. So in a nutshell, that's it. What I can say about how technologies shape our industry, our entertainment industry.
Thank you, Tatiana. I'm going to come to Ruben with the same question. What's changed over the last 18 months to 2 years?
Hi.
Good morning. Good morning. Very happy to see everyone who has joined us today this early morning. So talking about what happened in the last 18 months, so I agree with Tatiana that the changes are drastical. But of course, we need to understand that pandemic is just a catalyst that accelerated those processes that would have happened in any case. I mean, digitalization and everything that happens to content. It happened before, but things have been accelerated. So, what do I mean? I mean that, in fact, social distancing led us not just to the fact that people started to consume content at home and to entertain at home, but their basic need, I mean communication need, to talk to each other. So now we are doing it in a different way, and technologies are there to close this gap in social distancing. Even though we didn't have pandemic or social distancing, people don't have enough time to communicate due to different changes in their business life, in their private life, everything that relates to multitasking. So even if you're a regular employee, still you don't have much time to communicate with your friends. When it comes to Generation Z, the trend is that people say we tend to use social media less because we want to stay in real life. So physically, real communication is not always real. That's why technologies should make our online communication as much real as possible. So we have a feeling that you are talking physically to someone. Going back to entertainment industry, I can't say anything new with this regards. So we see that the content consumption has increased during the pandemic. It happened in the TV field as well. Looks like that TV is dying and everything goes through digital transformation, but still, no, TV is not dying. TV is still living, and I can tell you that the number of TV audience, number of people who started to watch television during the pandemic has increased. At the same time, content consumption in the digital environment has increased too. And for us, for instance, it's bad to say, but pandemic had a positive impact on us. The point is we don't have much time for our users, so because we have less and less time and people don't have enough time to deep dive into your content. So they are just paying attention to some big events only. And when we so people didn't have enough time to watch some niche shows or content channels. During the pandemic, people finally had enough time to explore different content. We see that some of our shows in YouTube got several million views because finally users found some time to watch it. So because previously it was second or third choice, now it has become a first choice show. So for our business, no matter how terrible it sounds, pandemic had a positive impact.
Thanks, Ruben. That's very interesting. And we might come in a moment. We might talk a little bit about other changes to content and formats and what we think is new in the market going forward. But just to finish off on this point about the pandemic and its effects on accelerating some of the changes and trends that might have already been present. Henry, can I just welcome you? Thanks, Henry, for coming. I think you're on mute. But just to ask you, from a cultural point of view, what do you think has changed over the last 2 years? Can you give us a good summary of the cultural changes?
Let's suppose 2 years ago, we did a thought experiment where we said, we're going to mute one of the major mass media, i.e. cinema, for a year and a half. We're going to lower the technical standards of American television in the global marketplace and slow down American television production and see what happens. I think several things happened at that moment. One of those is grassroots media, participatory media grew, something like live streaming, and its impact on the younger generation becomes much more prominent. I've been living with my adult son through the pandemic, and he's very into the ASMR community. And there we're seeing these very powerful women form audiences around them and play important roles in helping people who are depressed or anxious during the pandemic feel a sense of social connection, create a community around them that is ongoing, that is live, that is there every night for them and provides security. I'm watching him form movie clubs and watch movies together and TV together and discuss them in real time. Some of them authorized, more of them unauthorized or pirate television stations, but these have become important spaces for him socially and culturally. So that's change number one. Change number two is Americans are watching more international television content than ever before. We saw it with Lupin on Netflix. We saw it with Squid Games. We're seeing it with any number of other international shows in the American market. Raised in the US, we had a very protectionist policy toward international television for most of my lifetime. We might see a little British television on public broadcasting. We might catch some Canadian low-budget syndicated shows that we didn't quite realize were Canadian, but we didn't see Italian or Russian or Asian, Korean shows on American television. But we saw the market open up for that. In part, America's technical standards have always been one of the barriers to entry along with public policy, but lowering our technical standards during the pandemic has meant that international television competes on a more equal basis right now. A lot of this, again, is participatory in the grassroots fan communities, started building around what I call pop cosmopolitanism, the idea that people are seeking out diverse content to escape the parochialism of their own country. And some of that is fed by diasporic communities seeking familiar media from their home countries. And some of that is fans and otakus seeking content that is different from somewhere else in the world. And we combine those forces together, and there's a considerable buildup of interest in global television circulation, what I'm now calling the global scramble, because it doesn't follow necessarily diasporic communities. It doesn't follow traditional trade routes. International television is propping up in markets that historically would not have anything to do with each other. And I think those are the two most important trends I'm tracing during this pandemic, but there's so many more that we could talk about.
That's fascinating, Henry. I've done a bit of work on the otaku myself. I think we've got a lot to learn from how those sort of obsessive kind of fandom cultures treat the content and are engaged by content, aren't we? Tatiana, perhaps I could pick up on with you on the point that Henry just made about that. With this sort of globalization or global access to content like this and the internationalization, if you like, of content that's reaching American audiences and probably the other way around with you, what impact does this have for the kinds of stories that you want to tell through the medium? Are those changing? Are the narratives changing? Are there new perspectives on stories and storytelling?
Well, thank you for that question. It's a very interesting topic indeed. So what I want to say about consumers in general, consumers are more and more demanding. They are not just looking for a high quality image or good UI. They are looking forward for content that they can later on discuss with friends. It's a very important thing in terms of socializing and communication. When you get some content and then people get together, they call each other, they discuss something, they arrange fun communities, and it actually works. It increases number of views. It gives a chance or opportunity for new ideas. And Ruben mentioned it before that we need to fight for our audience. We need to fight for their attention. People don't have enough time to consume entertainment content. That's why all international studios and Russian studios are in a very high competition to get people's attention. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that new formats started to appear, like Squid Game, that embraces so many people, and it's all about tense discussions and interactions. Yes, they happen, and it's a new trendy thing in terms of content consumption. And also, we don't need to forget that big studios such as Warner Media continue to play with their content, and they resume stories like Friends or 20th anniversary of Harry Potter or Sex and the City. They still get an older audience and they attract new viewers as well. All these formats, all this plays with the audience is a new thing. It's very trendy, and this is what is happening right now in the media markets.
Ruben, perhaps I could come to you on where TV and cinema and some of these digital entertainment formats fit within the wider media landscape, because I know Media One Holding is not just about TV screens. You have outdoor, etc. I wonder if you could talk to the importance of connecting up all these different media for perhaps for this new generation and Gen Z that you mentioned earlier.
Well, first I need to say that television is still in high demand. And obviously, television is no longer as it was before. The television is reshaped thanks to different algorithms that simplify your choice. TV audience is very vast. We have different features like video on demand, postponed view, and so on and so forth. So previously, interactivity of channels was all about calling someone or sending an SMS. So now we see that interactivity is all about that people can impact the storyline. So it's a certain kind of engagement, and we see that television and online cinemas are mixing up. They overlap. So generally speaking, entertainment industry is now in the reshaping era, and it was a very painful process as we saw it over the last 2 years. It's very unpredictable, but it's very important to say that we don't need to forget about people and their preferences. People can play golf or do whatever they want without going outside. They can go to concerts, they can deep dive into the content with the 360 degrees audio and image much. So I personally believe that all entertainment formats can survive and can live, but the question is in what format and in what way, in what specialized channels they will be delivered to consumers. But given the technology development, and given that we go deeper into virtual reality, I think that entertainment can get second or even third breathe without even going online.
Yes, indeed, and we'll come to the metaverse in a moment, perhaps, and immersive media. But Ruben, would you like to take that question up about the integration of media beyond screens?
Да, я хотел бы сказать про то, что,
Yeah, I want to say that first we talk a lot about television today.
эту тему немножко
I would like to broaden this topic, and I would like to finish it from my side, because what television is,
телевидение не существует.
television does not exist. If we talk about television as a channel delivery, well, yes, television exists, but I don't believe that all big TV brands, for example, we have You TV or Moose TV, but these are not channels, these are brands. That's why content is consumed everywhere. We generate content, we produce content that can be consumed elsewhere. We can deliver it through a TV antenna or through digital or through cable or through social media. So you can watch content everywhere. That is why television does not exist anymore in a common sense. If we talk about consumption way, yeah, we now see new features coming up like a postponed view and so on and so forth. The question is how to produce content, and content production is all about looking at people's and people's preferences. So it's up to you to decide what you like and what to watch. We see that this trend is not related to the pandemic only, but the trend is accelerating. People have less and less time, it's obvious, and people have so much on their minds. So that's why we can talk a lot about the second screen that people always have at hand. We have the second screen, yes, but we also have the third screens. I have 3 screens in my life, at least 3 screens. And this is our reality, and people understand this is not good. And this is a kind of paradox, because on one hand, people have less time on entertainment. On the other hand, people have more necessity to entertain. Maybe this relates to the way we live. People want to survive. People want to offload their minds, because multitasking is a very complicated thing. It's very difficult to deal with the multiple devices and multiple things. On the other hand, we need to entertain more in order to survive. And entertainment industry, or at least a very big division of it, should come up with new ways of entertainment that can be run in the background or that can be run in parallel. And I think that maybe we can come up with formats, leisure formats, for those people who work. And it's my personal opinion that we will switch into it in order not to get crazy. People need to do some entertainment in parallel with their work. So maybe we will come up with new formats, and these new formats will allow you effortlessly and smoothly to switch between work and entertainment. And maybe work will be more entertaining. I mean real work that you do for a living. So maybe this will happen.
That's very interesting, actually. And you've picked up on one of the things I did want the panel to address, which is, and I'll come to you, Henry, perhaps for this question, which is media overwhelm. So you talked obviously about these participatory sort of media groups and activists and the grassroots of this. But as we've just heard, there's a lot more content. And sometimes, especially if we're at home, although we're not always at home, it's coming through a tiny little pipe, really. Do you think people feel overwhelmed with media, entertainment media at the moment? And if so, are there any tools that they seem to be using to help them manage this? You're on mute, Henry, sorry. Thank you.
I certainly feel overwhelmed by the amount of high quality content from global distribution that are available to me at the current time. But being overwhelmed, I think, means that we're like people at a cocktail party, always looking over our shoulders for a more interesting conversation that may be taking place across the room, right? We're looking for content we can drill into and spend time with in a more less distracted way. So I think there is a tension between sampling a lot of media at a fairly glib and superficial level and the desire to binge watch, drill into a television show, engage with conversation around it, maybe follow the connections of that television show outward across a range of media into a transmedia franchise, which might connect us to film, comics, novels, and so forth. So there's a difference between the kind of grazing behavior we're seeing and a more in-depth behavior. Now, I don't think the second screen model really fully captures that, because I think, technically speaking, multitasking is a misnomer. It is not that we are doing two things at once. We are seeking greater efficiencies by decreasing downtime. So we're shifting our attention between multiple things, but we're not paying attention to two things at the same time. So the second screen model that emerged in the industry for a period of time proved to be a failure in the American context. We didn't want to shop for the clothes we saw on our favorite sitcom. We didn't want to stop and drill into new information that annotated what we were seeing on television. We did potentially want to work and come up and pay attention to television, skip the commercials, maybe skip the dull parts of the show, and just resurface for the peak moments of emotional tension. We did want to fold our laundry and watch television soap operas at the same time, say. But that's different than saying we want a second screen always there that's responsive to the first screen and continually pulls us back into it. Because I think very little of the experiments with second screen TV in the American context proved successful.
That's interesting. Those emotional moments, do those help drive recommendation engines? So I wanted to talk a little bit about what we thought about recommendations and recommendation agencies in trying to surface some of the preferences that Titania was talking about. Do you have a point of view on that, Henry?
Well, the other day, Amazon sent me a list of 15 books that I might like, all of which I wrote. So it tells me something about, they were both accurate on one level. Yes, I enjoyed those books. I wrote them and I've read them. But it told me something else, that the recommendation engine that Amazon is driving generally fails to recommend content to me that I care about. What recommendations matter to me are those that come to me through social media from my friends, and particularly those that come from fan communities, which I use to filter my content and direct me toward things that are going to meet my aesthetic and thematic interest. I think fans as a whole are better filters than any mechanical system that's been developed so far. So I'm not a great believer in intelligent agents solving this problem for us. I believe in the real intelligent agents, which is the collective knowledge communities that fandom and other online niche communities provide us.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Titania, we were just talking about the follow-up to Sex and the City, because I'm quite excited that Just Like That is about to preview this year. But of course, the way I keep up to date with that is through fan communities. So how do you surface consumers' preferences, either through fan communities and engaged groups like that, or indeed via AI orientated search engines or recommendation engines? That's to Titania.
Well, Yeah, that's a very interesting question indeed. But first I need to say that in general, online cinema that gives you an opportunity to watch content from big known studios is a guarantee that this content is high quality content, that this is decent content, and it delivers you good image, good plot, and it will give you some pleasure. And of course, we are using new technologies for sure, recommendation engines, but still, we are human beings, and still, the spread of the word works. We still ask each other what to watch, what we like. In social media, we can read about content, we can read reviews, and this is the driver of views. And this is the thing that actually makes some content more and more popular.
Ruben, do you agree?
Я, во-первых, не очень согласен.
Well, first, I don't agree that the second screen cannot be used while watching TV series. At least in the Russian market, it happens all the time, and the Z generation cannot live without the second screen. And in rare cases, we see that people are just watching the screen. But well, it depends. The more content, if the content is fascinating, of course, you will not be distracted by other things, or you will spend your time just on watching a TV series. But we see that sometimes people spend 3, 4, or 5 hours on TV series, and sometimes they are just forced to make to use the second screen. Talking about recommendations, it's not a secret, and this trend has been there for many years, because I have a very rich experience in digital marketing and social media. I can tell you that any trend, any brand should act as a human being in social media. The more it looks like a human being in terms of their behavior, the easier it will be for us to interact with it. So this overlaps with what Henry said. I would rather believe some fan communities' recommendations, or some people who watch over the shoulder and say this is a good TV series, than listen to a brand. So recommendations from influencers, and they're human beings. These recommendations are being perceived better than recommendations from brands who are just writing commercials. But in general, the system of what different people from different generations react to is very different, starting from TV series promotion to the place of watching. So what you can do in TikTok in order to promote your content and what you can do in Instagram are completely two different things. If in Instagram there is some sense to show trailers, in TikTok there is no sense to show trailers. In TikTok you just need to show an interesting snippet or episode of content. So the social media are different, and they're using different forms and formats, but the more human the brand is, the better they will work in terms of recommendations. So brands should be humanistic. Also, that generation is all about sociability. They want to think, and they need to think that the content that they consume, or the content that they consume, has some social function and CSR function as well. It's very important, and in Russian happens like that, in my view at least.
It was interesting what you said about TikTok. That's what I was trying to get at with those emotional moments from great high quality TV. I think they do give us some amazing snippets for TikTok and other social media. Henry, we've got about 7 minutes left, and I want to start to turn to what's coming next and where we think this is all heading, particularly over the next or this decade. How do we think either audiences' habits or preferences or formats that they desire, how is that going to change over, let's say, the span of the next sort of 8 to 10 years?
Well, if I knew that for sure, I'd be making a lot of money in Hollywood down the road from us, since I'm based in Los Angeles. I do think that we're going to see even more collective decision making as we deal with the sheer amount of media that we're exposed to. I do think we're going to see more global content playing a role, not only in the American market, but in this global scramble that I talked about earlier. I do think we're going to see a shift in how movies operate in the culture, with many, many films being experienced online rather than in the movie theaters. But those movie theaters that survive counterintuitively will not be the big movie chain theaters, the multiplexes, which have dominated the last era, but are more likely to be ma-pa theaters that have very distinctive programming strategies and build stronger loyalty with their consumer base. In the same way that independent bookstores have largely survived the Amazon onslaught by adopting distinctive curatorial practices that means people go there looking for particular kinds of books and particularly judgment about what content they're going to find compelling. So I think the challenge of finding compelling content amidst the sheer range of options available to us is going to drive the next phase of things. Now, you alluded to the multiverse earlier. The multiverse that's being pushed as an immersive world, I think, we've been down that path before. I was a great believer in Second Life, for example, which was very much a multiverse-based model. I don't think it was simply the bleeding edge that paved the way for something later. I think it demonstrated some fundamental flaws in a lot of the discussion of the multiverse, and I haven't seen those flaws addressed yet. And so if it didn't work to have a grassroots supported participatory version of the multiverse, I'm even less convinced that a model that's based on a media monopoly is going to be what people are drawn toward. So to me, this is one of those things that's hype now, may not ever become a reality, but is kind of a been there, done that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because what you're alluding to with the independent curatorial theatres is that about integrity and authenticity. And yes. My question would be, how do we get authenticity and integrity in the metaverse? And what does that mean for Hollywood? What do you think the metaverse means for Hollywood?
Well, if there's a metaverse, it's not in a single spot, but it's the ways stories connect to each other across media platforms that enable a multiverse rather than a metaverse, right? And I'm purposely using Marvel's cinematic universe language to talk about where we're at right now with these huge, expansive franchises that are coupled now, in Marvel's case, with really rich television content that connects in complex ways to that story world, that is increasingly exploring diverse versions of that story, that paves the way for more inclusive content storytellers, despite working within a monopoly. And I think it's that ability to bring more storytellers into the system that will determine whether these big franchises succeed in the future or not. So I'm still more interested in the multiverse than I am in the metaverse.
Yes, that makes total sense. I'm going to bring Tatiana in on that, because she may have something to say about that, about these gated systems or the closed nature of some of the studios going forward into a more immersive entertainment environment. Would you like to speak to that, Tatiana, and give us a flavor of what you think is ahead over the next sort of 8 to 10 years?
Однозначно, в ближайшие 8-10.
Yeah, exactly. In the next 8 to 10 years, they're going to be very dynamic and interesting. And as the experience of the last few years has shown, everything's very dynamic, changing very quickly. And the media that we traditionally have lived in
совершенно другими сейчас.
They're becoming totally different these days.
Зрение медиа, я
And from the media point of view, I'm confident that we will see certain globalization taking place. And what does that mean for the consumer?
будет легко даже
Consumers will find it very easy not just to find content, but to use it
и слышать, и смотреть, и
when you can at the same time watch,
всё это
choose quickly.
нынешней аудитории, которая
And all these are the needs of today's audiences
увеличиваться,
that will grow and expand.
которым
And the Zeta generation that Ruben has been talking about,
изменит наш
it will definitely change our media world, and we're
подстраиваться.
sure going to move and adjust to suit them, actually. So definitely we're in for some very exciting times,
Lovely.
Всем будет
Thank you,
очень
Tatiana. We
интересно.
have
and I'm sure it's going to be very interesting to watch.
Thank you. We have 1.5 minutes left. Ruben, the final word to you in 1.5 minutes. What does the future of digital entertainment hold?
Ну хорошо, раз мы сегодня говорим...
All right, since we're talking mostly about media content, I mean the content part, I think the technology is going to grow ever faster, moving towards VR and AR.
Я куда-то пропал визуально.
I think I've lost my video feed, but here I am with you.
We've got 1 minute left, so quick summary, Ruben.
Да.
Thank you.
Будет развиваться AR, VR.
So AR and VR are going to grow because expensive big studios like Marvel and so on are going to spend huge money, because now common consumers now can make decent content using just mobile phones. So to be different from them, studios are going to employ ever more expensive and complicated technologies to stay ahead. That's my resume.
That's brilliant. Thank you. So complex, but more diverse and participatory media times ahead with, of course, incredibly high quality content. Thank you. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you to our audience. And I will hand over back to the studio. Thanks, everyone.
Спасибо.
Мы – транспортно-логистический холдинг «Российские железные дороги». Мы развиваем транспортную инфраструктуру страны, строим новые станции, вокзалы и создаем новые возможности для вашего бизнеса. Лучшие скоростные и высокоскоростные поезда сделают ваше путешествие комфортным и безопасным. Мы – локомотив экономики. Сотни миллионов тонн грузов ежегодно. Развитие науки и социальной сферы – это наш вклад в благосостояние страны и ваша уверенность в завтрашнем дне.